Namaskaram friends. So in this discussion I am going to talk about five very important topic concerning the nation, the human being as well as the world. So today's five important topics are: first one is village defense guard, okay, which is set up in the Jammu and Kashmir UT of the India. So UT means Union Territory. So village defense guard is a type of, you can say, a group which is set up by the you can say central government of India in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Next topic is, today we are going to talk about the Lok Adalat, okay, and how any case pending before the court can be referred to the Lok Adalat. What are the different mechanism? Third one is, we are going to talk about disparity between the retirement age of High Court as well as Supreme Court. And fourth one is, I am going to talk about the environmental entropathy. What is environmental entropathy? And the next one, fifth one, is green status of species. So I am going to talk about, very briefly discuss each and every topic in a bit detail and try to understand its significance on the life of the human being, as well as the economic development of the nation, as well as the overall growth of the whole world. So the first topic is village defense committee. Village defense guard, village defense guard. So village defense committee were first formed in the erstwhile Doda district. Currently we are going to form village defense guard, but in the erstwhile Doda district in the mid 1990s. In the mid 1990s, the Doda district, now the district is currently district of Kishtwar, Doda and Ramban districts are now other in 1990 form a just one district called Doda districts. So village defense committee was first formed in the erstwhile Doda district. Currently it is Kishtwar, Doda and Ramban district in the mid 1990s as a force multiplier against militant attacks. We know that in Jammu and Kashmir militant attacks are going on because Jammu and Kashmir share border with the Pakistan, and Pakistan sent their militants for create militancy as well as chaos in that region. That's why at that time in mid 1990 we created village defense council as a force multiplier against militant attacks in the Jammu and Kashmir. The then Jammu and Kashmir administration decided to provide residents of remote hilly villages with weapons and give them arms training to defend themselves. So at that time administration of Jammu and Kashmir decided to provide resident who are living in that you can say district, they provide weapons as well as some arms training to defend themselves when there is, let's say, militant attack in that village. So how people protect them, because security personnel are not in a very, you can say, not at that time present in that village. So it is training given by the Jammu and Kashmir administration to the people living in the remote hilly villages with weapons, as well as give them some arm training. If they give some arm training as well as some weapons, so they can protect themselves till the security forces reaches there. Okay, the VDC have now been renamed as a village defense guard. In mid 1990, this group is called as a VDC, village defense committee, but now currently it is renamed as village defense guard. The then scheme is to set up VDG in vulnerable area of J&K was approved by the Union Ministry of Home Affairs in March last year. Okay, so in the new scheme we set up a VDG in vulnerable area of J&K. In Jammu and Kashmir area which are vulnerable, we set VDG in that area, and this is approved by the Union Ministry of Home Affairs in March last year. That means in March 2021. Like a VDC member, each VDC like a VDC member, like village defense council committee members, each VDG, village defense guard, we provided a gun and 100 round of ammunition, because so that they protect them from the you can say instant attack by the militant. So they provided with a gun as well as 100 round of ammunition. Both VDG and VDC is a group of civilians provided guns and ammunition to tackle militants in case of attack until the arrival of the security forces. Okay, so both VDG as well as VDC is a group of civilian. Both are a group of civilian provided guns and ammunition. Both have central government provided both of them a guns as well as ammunition to tackle militants, so that they can tackle militants in case of attack until the arrival of security force. So until the security forces are arrived, we give the training to the VDG as well as VDC so that they can protect themselves when the current attack, or you can say an instant or very immediate attack happen on that village on that people. The VDG official said the VDG will function under the direction of the SP SSP of the district concerned. So let's say in Doda district attack happened, so SP SSP of that district, you can say, guide them the VDG group of that area. A minimum of 10 to 15 ex-servicemen, ex-policemen and able-bodied local youth were enrolled in each VDC on the voluntary basis. So it is a voluntary basis and a minimum of 10 to 15. Okay, maximum can be anything, but a minimum of 10 to 15 ex-servicemen. A man who is earlier served in that area, ex-policemen, policemen who are served as a police in that, and able-bodied local youth, a youth who are not, you can say, are not doing any job in a service or any police. So an able-bodied local youth, that means he is able to you can say defend themselves, defend that region, and is a, of course here whose physique is a good, is participate in it on a voluntary basis. The idea was taken from the 1965 and 1971 Indo-Pak War, when the government armed ex-servicemen and able-bodied youth in the village along the border to guard against infiltration of Pakistani spies. So in 1965 and in 1971, during the Indo-Pak War, government during that time government armed ex-servicemen and able-bodied youth in the village along the border to guard against infiltration of the Pakistani spies. So VDG is frame, or you can say VDG is made on the idea of VDC, which is in the late 1990s is formed, and this idea is taken from the 1965 and 1971 Indo-Pak War. Okay, because during that time government provide them arms, ammunition and training to the able-bodied youth as well as government ex-servicemen, so that they can protect themselves from the infiltration against infiltration of Pakistan spies. Okay, or you can say they catch them and give information to the government regarding the Pakistani spies. Okay, but you can say we take this idea from the 1965 and 1971 war, but VDC were first formed in the erstwhile Doda district. Okay, so I hope you understand the whole topic, and the important point of this discussion is, remember, VDG, Village Defence Committee, Village Defence Guard, VDC, Village Defence Committee, Ministry, Union Ministry of Home Affairs, and we provide VDG with provide a gun as well as 100 rounds of ammunition, and who can participate into it, ex-servicemen. Okay, ex-servicemen can participate into it, able-bodied youth as well as ex-policemen. These type 3 people are participate into it, and who guard them, who provide them guidance, SP SSP of that area. Okay, and at least and minimum of 10 to 15 these types of people have to enroll into it. Okay, so remember, important point of idea taken from 1965 and 1971 Indo-Pak War. First form VDC was formed in mid 1990, and currently we form VDG so that we can protect the region of Jammu and Kashmir for infiltration of Pakistani militants. Okay, so I hope you understand the whole topic of VDG. Okay, and now we are going to move on, and now just solve one question on it. I just read the question and you have to just answer it. Question is, Village Defence Guard that were recently in news are set up in. I give you 4 options. VDG that were recently in news is set up in. First option is Arunachal Pradesh, second is Nagaland, third one is Jammu and Kashmir, and fourth one is Punjab. So we remember Jammu and Kashmir. Yeah, VDG is set up in the Jammu and Kashmir region. Okay, so I hope you understand the whole idea of VDG. Now I'm going to move on the second topic called Lok Adalat. Okay, see, any case pending before the court can be referred to the Lok Adalat for settlement. Okay, and if there are many conditions, or you can say there are 3 to 4 conditions, if any case pending before the court can be referred to the Lok Adalat. First one is the parties. Let's say there is a dispute going on between the 2 parties. So both parties thereof agree to settle the dispute in Lok Adalat. If both parties are agree that they want to settle their dispute in the Lok Adalat, then that case pending before the court can be referred to the Lok Adalat. Next one is one of the party. Let's say there is a dispute going on between the 2 parties. So one of the parties thereof makes an application to the court any one of the party make application to the court for referring the case to the Lok Adalat, in that case also that case is referred to the Lok Adalat. Next one is, the court is satisfied that the matter is an appropriate one to be taken cognizance of by the Lok Adalat. If court satisfied that this matter which is pending before it is an appropriate one to be taken cognizance by the Lok Adalat, then that case also referred to the Lok Adalat. And remember, in the case of a pre-legislation dispute, that means a case, or you can say dispute pending before the court, the matter can be referred to the Lok Adalat for settlement by the agency organizing the Lok Adalat on receipt of an application from any one of the party to the dispute. Okay, so important point is that if any pre-litigation dispute, in case of a pre-litigation dispute, the matter can be referred to the Lok Adalat for settlement. Okay, in pre-litigation dispute, that matter referred to the Lok Adalat for settlement by the agency organizing the Lok Adalat. Okay, agency which organized the Lok Adalat referred the case to the Lok Adalat on receipt of an application from any one of the party to the dispute. Any you can say any agency cannot transfer or refer the dispute to the Lok Adalat if any one of the party who are involved in the dispute, okay, make an application for transferring or referring the dispute, then agency which organizing the Lok Adalat referred the case to the Lok Adalat. Okay, so I hope you understand the three important aspects by which any case pending before the court can be referred to the Lok Adalat. First one is, both the parties are agreed to settle the dispute in it. One of the party you can say make an application to the court to refer the dispute, as well as third one is, court is satisfied that case is a appropriate one to be taken cognizance by the Lok Adalat. So I hope you understand the whole idea of Lok Adalat. Okay, and its important point. Now we are going to solve one question. I read the question, take 1 minute and solve it. Okay, question is, any case pending before the court can be referred to the Lok Adalat for settlement if, okay, again I read the question, any case pending before the court can be referred to the Lok Adalat for settlement if, first one is, the parties agreed to settle the dispute in the Lok Adalat, the court is satisfied that the matter is an appropriate one to be taken cognizance of by the Lok Adalat, third one is, one of the party make an application to the court for referring the case to the Lok Adalat. Okay, which one is correct? Only one, only two, both 1 and 2, both 2 and 3, all 1, 2 and 3. So just read first statement. The party agreed to settle the dispute in the Lok Adalat. Yes, this statement is correct. How? Both the parties, that means both the parties are agreed to settle the dispute. This is the condition of referring any dispute to the Lok Adalat. So first one is correct. Second one is, the court is satisfied that the matter is an appropriate one. So in this manner, court is satisfied that the matter is an appropriate one to taken cognizance by the Lok Adalat. So this one is also correct. Third one is, one of the party make an application to the court for referring the case to the Lok Adalat. Third one is also correct, because first case is both they agree, second one is anyone refer, third one is court is satisfied. So all these statement are talking about this only. So all the statement are correct. That means option is D, 1, 2 and 3. Okay, now we will move on to the third question. Third question is related to the retirement age of the judges of the Supreme Court as well as High Court. Okay, and also who appoint the Chief Justice of India? It is by the Constitution or by the law or by the President, whatever it is. Okay, so remember, there is a disparity between the retirement age of High Court and Supreme Court judges. There is a disparity because we know that High Court judges now retire at 62 and Supreme Court judges retire at 65. So there is a disparity between the retirement age of both the Supreme Court judges as well as High Court judges. It is generally assumed that the senior most judge of the Supreme Court should be the Chief Justice of India. Okay, it is generally assumed that the senior in Supreme Court there are many judges, so senior most judge of the Supreme Court should be the Chief Justice of India. But we may pause to consider, we have to pause and consider whether this is what the law mandate is, the rule is mandated by the law, and whether it is wholly wise. Because why it is wholly wise? Because let's say if any judge is more knowledgeable, or you can say more conscious than a judge which is senior than that judge, so it is appropriate that we appoint Chief Justice of India basis on the superiority, not basis on the knowledge and not basis of the awareness. No, I think it is not wise, which is not a wise decision. We have to choose Chief Justice of India not on the basis of seniority, but on the basis of their efficiency, on the basis of their knowledge, on the basis of their merit. So merit is a criteria, not the senior most requirement. Okay. And as per the constitution, there is no mandate, as to the constitution mandate no such thing as the senior most judge become the chief justice officer. So there is no mention of such a thing in our constitution. So if any statement come is constitution mandate, this one is completely wrong. Okay. Article 124 merely states, Article 124 of the constitution states that the president will appoint every judge of the Supreme Court, and this include the chief justice. Okay. Article 124 said that president will appoint every judge of the Supreme Court, and this include the chief justice also, and each of these judges shall hold office until they attain the age of 65. So in the constitution it is not mandated that senior most judge become the chief justice of India. In Article 24 it is just merely said that president will appoint all the judges of the Supreme Court, including chief justice of India, and all the judges are retired at the age of 65. Okay. So it is generally considered that a senior most judge of the Supreme Court become the chief justice of India. Okay. So I hope you understand about the disparity between the age of the Supreme Court and High Court judges, and who mandated that senior most judge become the chief justice of India. Now we are going to solve one question based on it. Consider the following. There is disparity between the retirement age of the High Court and Supreme Court judges in India. Second one is the President of India appoint every judge of the Supreme Court, including the Chief Justice of India. Third one is the Constitution of India mandate that the senior most judge of the Supreme Court should be the Chief Justice of India. The first statement is there is a disparity between the retirement age of the Supreme Court and High Court judges. Yes, High Court judges retire at 62 and Supreme Court judges at 65. So first one is correct. Second one is the President of India appoint every judge of the Supreme Court, including the Chief Justice of India. Yes, Article 124 mandate that. Third one is the Constitution of India mandate that the senior most judge of the Supreme Court should be the Chief Justice of India. No, it is not mandated by the Constitution. It is just generally people. It is, you can say, generally a tradition. It is also not, I think, made in the law, and not a wise decision. Okay. So the first one is correct, second one is correct, third one is wrong because Constitution not mandated. So option 1 and 2 is correct. Okay. Now we are move on to the next topic called the environmental enteropathy. What environmental enteropathy is? So what is environmental enteropathy? In simple term, environmental enteropathy is a disorder of the intestine. Okay, this environmental enteropathy is a disorder of our intestine which prevent the proper absorption of nutrient, rendering them effectively useless. When that condition occur, when any person, let's say if any person is suffer from the environmental entropy, so their intestine prevent the proper absorption of nutrient and rendering them effectively useless. So it is a disorder of our intestine. Okay. Next one is, since the disorder was intricately connected to the poor environmental condition its victim live. If any victim is live in a poor environmental condition, that disease is very intricately related to that, and it came to be called environmental enteropathy. Okay, so environmental enteropathy is a related with the intestine disorder, and it is intricately related with the poor environmental condition of its victim. Okay. Like diarrhea disease, intestinal disease, parasite infection, and environmental enteropathy all together impact the normal growth and cognitive development of children, leading to anemia, stunting, and wasting. So remember it important point of environmental enteropathy. It is an intestinal disorder. It is intricately related to the poor environmental condition of its victim, and environmental enteropathy, diarrhea disease, and intestinal parasite infection together impact the normal growth and cognitive development of children. And if children are not cognitively, you can say their growth is not normal and their cognitive development is not happen in a proper manner, then our future of any nation is suffer a lot. So we have to focus on it, and these all leading to the anemia, stunting, and wasting. So 3 problems due to environmental enteropathy. Development of children is hampering, as well as disease like anemia, stunting, and you can say disorder like anemia, stenting and wasting is also happening. So remember, environmental enteropathy directly related with the environmental condition of the victim and related with the intestinal disorder, okay, and leading to the anemia, stunting, wasting in the children, and normal growth as well as cognitive development of a children is happening due to it, okay. So I hope you understand environmental enteropathy, and remember important point of which: anemia, stunting, wasting, normal growth, cognitive development, poor environmental condition, as well as disorder of the intestine, and it prevent the proper absorption of the nutrient, okay. So now we are going to solve one question on it, okay. Very clearly listen the each and every statement. First one is question is: consider the following statement regarding environmental enteropathy. First one is: environmental enteropathy is a disorder of chronic lung inflammation. Correct? Environmental disorder is a disorder of chronic lung inflammation. Yes, this one is correct. Second one is: the disorder is intricately connected to the poor environmental condition. Yes, this disorder is connected with it. Third one is: it impacts the normal growth and cognitive development of the children, leading to anemia, stunting and wasting. This one is also correct. First one is, I think it is not lung, it is intestine. I'm sorry, first one is wrong. Environmental enteropathy is disorder of the chronic lung inflammation. No, intestinal inflammation. So first statement is wrong, second and third is correct, okay. So statement second and third is correct. So option is, you can make an option 2 and 3 is, there are 4 options: 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 2 and 3, 1, 2 and 3. So option C is correct, 2 and 3 is correct, okay. So now we're moving to our last topic called green status of species. As the name suggests, green status of species. Status of species, and it is green, that means they can talk about its full development, full growth of the species. So the IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature, the IUCN green status of species, a new global standard to measure how close a species is to being fully ecologically functional across its range. So basically IUCN green status of species is a new global standard to measure how close a species is to being fully ecologically functional across its range. Not fully functional, fully ecologically functional across its range, not in overall range. Remember each and every statement, and how much it has recovered due to conservational effort. So green status of a species is a new global standard to measure the how close a species being fully ecologically functional across its range, and how much it has recovered due to the environmental conservation. So it is important that through green status of a species, we have an idea that how close a species is fully ecologically functional in its range, as well as due to when we take different environmental, you can say, efforts, how it has impacted in the growth of that species. So this status is very important, and remember it is related by the or associated with the IUCN, okay. A small topic, okay. Global green status of species, it is a global standard to measure its fully functional in its range, fully ecologically functional in its range, and its and how much it has recovered due to the environmental condition. Let's say if any species suffer, then if environmental, you can say, effort is taken, how that species is recovered from it, okay. So now we are going to solve one question on it. Consider the following statement regarding green status of species. First statement is: it is a new global standard to measure how close a species is being fully ecologically functional across its range. Yes, this is the definition of, you can say, green status of a species. It is a new global standard to measure how close a species is being fully ecologically functional across its range. Second one, it is launched by UNFCCC. No, UNFCCC, no. It is launched by the IUCN. Third one is, it measures how much the species has recovered due to conservation effort. Yes. So option first and third is correct. So option statement 1 and 3 is correct. So option B is correct. Option 1 is 1 and 2, B is 1 and 3, C is 2 and 3, D is 1, 2 and 4, and 1, 2 and 3. We know that 1 and 3 is correct. That means option B is correct. So I hope you understand the whole idea of today's topic, and today we discuss 5 important topic, okay. 5 important topic. Green, you can say what, first one is GDC, okay, which is set up in the Jammu and Kashmir region. So VDG, Village Defense Guard. So first topic is today we are talking about 5 important topics. First one is Village Defense Guard, or you call it as a VDG. Second one is we are discussing about Lok Adalat. In third one we are discussing about the disparity between the retirement age of Supreme Court and High Court judges, as well as the appointment of Chief Justice of India. In fourth topic we have discussed about the environmental anthropathy, and fifth one we have discussed the global green status of species. So I hope you understand the topic, you enjoyed the topic, and gain some perspective, some knowledge from five of these important topics. So I hope you love it, you enjoy it, and gain some perspective, some knowledge out of it. So namaskaram, thank you.